Welcome back, my friends. Currently, we're on day 180 of Russia's disastrous invasion of Ukraine, and in this war, I'm always looking for something new, something different to report for you, and this definitely qualifies as something different, as the daughter of Putin's propagandist was killed in a car bombing outside of Moscow. This was a targeted hit, and investigators believe the primary target was meant to be her father. So the daughter of a far-right Russian ideologue, commonly known as Putin's brain for his supposed influence over the Russian president's fascist views, she was killed in a car bombing outside of Moscow late Saturday, triggering outraged calls for revenge from pro-Kremlin figures who blamed Ukraine for the blast. Now, the intended target was Alexander Dugin. If you want to know briefly a little bit more about this guy, he did a interview with 60 Minutes in English back in 2017. Let me show you about 20 seconds of this clip.
I'm a supporter of Putin, so I am transmitting the will of conservative society, of Russian identity. I'm not formulating this individually.
Alexander Dugin is a Russian political philosopher who's been called the Putin whisperer. He's got Vladimir Putin's ear, and he's really influential in shaping Russian policy at the highest level.
You are known as Putin's Rasputin, and I've even seen Putin's brain. So
he's known as Putin's brain. Putin listens to this guy and what he has to say. So let me share with you just a little bit about what Alexander Dugin thinks of this war and thinks of Ukrainians. Here is the social media post he made. This is the Russian. And here is the English translation. Ukraine must be cleansed of idiots. The genocide of nerds suggests itself. Evil cretins close to the voice of Logos. Deadly. And for all this incredibly stupid, I don't believe they are Ukrainians. Ukrainians are wonderful Slavic people. This is some kind of bastard race that emerged from the sewer manholes. So this guy, Alexander Dugin, is openly calling for genocide to exterminate the Ukrainian people so that this land can belong to proper Russians. And if you're feeling sympathy for his daughter, she is basically in the family business. Her name is Darya Dugin, and she is also a Russian propagandist, completely lockstep with her father. And this was her final appearance on Russian state TV just before her death. This clip is about 50 seconds long. Let's watch it together.
Западный человек живет во сне, который ему дала мировая гегемония, и для того, чтобы его немножко пробуждать, чтобы он совсем как-то вот не уж разлагался на отдельные фрагменты, ему нужна подпитка вот этой войной, причем очень дозированно. А если он, не дай бог, начнет разбираться в ней и уже понимать, какие стороны между собой противостоят, тогда это очень опасно, нужно его опять зацеплять.
То есть война — это мир по Оруэллу, грубо говоря.
Да, совершенно точно.
Война — это мир.
Недавно были проведены опросы на улицах, Fox News проводил на улицах Америки, американских крупных городов, причем довольно представляющих собой береговую зону, там, где демократы в основном популярны. И люди не могли показать, где находятся Украина и Россия. Они показывали на Австралию, но они при этом были уверены на 100%, что необходимо вести активные боевые действия против России, может быть, даже включиться в этот конфликт.
В Австралии.
Да, так что это...
So in this clip, they're referring to the United States, saying it's a zombie politics, a zombie society. In this Russian state TV propaganda clip, they actually have the audacity to quote George Orwell's 1984 to justify their continued war in Ukraine. Darya Dugin also recently published a book called The Book of Z, a manifesto, once again, calling for the genocide of Ukrainian people. And on social media, we have the live reaction of Alexander Dugin. What was supposed to happen was they were at some big wig event, and this car was parked in a VIP parking section. Alexander was supposed to be the driver, but his daughter, for whatever reason, went to go get the car, and as soon as the car turned on, it exploded. And this is the live reaction of Alexander Dugin, seeing that the car has been destroyed, that he knows his daughter was inside. I can't play the clip for you, but I will link it down below. And Russia is vowing to strike Ukraine after the daughter of Vladimir Putin's ally dies in a car bomb. The problem with this is that Ukraine was not responsible. A new group, the Russian National Republican Army, has claimed responsibility for the attempted assassination of Dugin that killed his daughter. They released a video on YouTube. I'll link it down below. And I've never heard of these guys. I don't think anyone has ever heard of these guys. I'm pretty confident this Wikipedia page was only created 2 days ago. But the National Republican Army is an alleged underground partisan group of Russians inside Russia working towards the violent overthrow of the Putin regime. And this is the purported Nra Manifesto. This is what they're saying. We declare Vladimir Putin as a usurper of power and a war criminal who amended the Constitution. He unleashed a fratricidal war between the Slavic peoples and sent Russian soldiers to certain and senseless death, poverty and coffins for some, palaces for others, the essence of his policy. We believe that disenfranchised people have the right to rebel against tyrants. Putin will be deposed and destroyed by us. Well, I'm digging this, guys. Poverty and coffins for some, palaces for others. That's a pretty good slogan. And prior to their public acknowledgments of the attack in Moscow, I myself was wondering who was responsible for this. And ironically, the list is getting pretty long. So who would want to rig a car to explode to take out inner circle members of Putin's regime? And this is the names that I could come up with. We're going to put National Republican Army of Russia as number one because they're actually doing something. Bravo to these guys. But in general, any Russians who have felt oppressed under the Putin regime the last 22 years, now is the time to rise up and take action to change your government. Putin has only been able to stay in power these last 22 years by arresting, murdering, and silencing all of his political rivals. There is no free and fair elections in Russia. There is no freedom of press or the right to criticize the Putin regime. Anyone who has lived under this oppression the last 22 years, now is your opportunity. There also is the high likelihood that Ukrainian spies with the SBU are operating inside Russia currently, either plotting assassinations or committing acts of sabotage. But it also could just be Russian citizens of Ukrainian descent, people with family and friends in Ukraine who oppose this war. If they want to take action, now's the time. Next might be Belarusians unhappy with their own governments. Lukashenko in Belarus is very unpopular, and he is only being kept in power because Vladimir Putin wants him there. So in order to get rid of Lukashenko, you need to first get rid of Vladimir Putin. Just an idea for all the Belarusians out there. Next we have oldies but goldies, the Chechens. If they ever need arms or funding or intelligence, they probably can just contact MI6 or the CIA. I think we can help these guys. Next, I want to toss on the list is the Crimean Tartarus. The Russians committed a genocide against them. They are the ethnic and indigenous people to the Crimean Peninsula, and under the Soviet Union, the Russians mass deported millions of them to central Siberia. They took them away from their homeland and relocated them to worthless land in Siberia. So if the Tartars ever want to return to Crimea, their ancestral homeland, they probably would have a better opportunity under a Ukrainian government than the current Russian government. The final person I want to add to this list is the FSB. This is Russia's intelligence agency. If they do suspect that the Putin regime is fracturing and weakening, then a purge might be coming. I think Russia has had like 3 revolutions in the last 100 years, so this is very common in Russia. And if Vladimir Putin is going to be deposed or disappeared, then everyone in his inner circle at the same time probably will be purged as well. So it just makes sense for the FSB to get the ball rolling and start taking out some of these guys a little bit early, blame the Ukrainians, but then when the moment comes to strike at Putin, you go full force. Interestingly, about this VIP parking lot, the security cameras were disabled 2 weeks ago and never turned back on. So we don't know, we don't have visual images of the car bomb being planted on the car when the FSB should have that information. The rest of this video is just going to be all of the attacks that Ukrainians have successfully been making behind Russian lines. There's honestly been so many of them, I can't even keep track of them anymore, but I'll do my best for you in this video to summarize everything that's been happening. And Russia increasingly is feeling the sting of war behind the lines. Every day, new targets inside Russia and Crimea are blowing up, and by all indications, this is just the beginning. So the first one comes at a ammunition depot in Belgorod. This caught fire last Thursday, and the secondary explosions from this ammo depot getting hit went on for days. There also was a drone attack at the Kerch Bridge. I think the purpose of this was to test their air defense systems. Now, the ammo depot that blew up in Belgorod, this wasn't in the proper city of Belgorod. It was in the Belgorod Oblast, near the city of Timanovo, and this is more than 100 kilometers from Ukrainian-controlled territory. So more than likely this wasn't done with a GMLRS rocket from a HIMARS. Either the Ukrainians have a longer range weapon, or there are partisans, saboteurs behind enemy lines going after all of these high-value targets. Next up, explosions reported in Ukraine's Russian-occupied Crimea region. This occurred near the Belbek military airport outside the port city of Sevastopol. So when we go on Google Maps, here's Crimea. Sevastopol is the city/naval base in the southwest, and the Belbek airport is here. And you can see on Google satellite images where all of these Russian fighter jets, Russian planes are being held. There were minor explosions at this airfield, but nothing as spectacular and dramatic as the destruction of the Saki Airbase 2 weeks ago. So more than likely, I think the Ukrainians are testing the air defense systems here, trying to take them out, and then a larger coordinated strike will eventually occur. Next up is a Shadowy long-range kamikaze drone strike against the Black Sea Fleet headquarters. The same thing occurred about a month ago, and there were injuries and deaths in the attack. And this time we got really good pictures and videos of what this drone looks like, and it was identified as being a drone available for purchase on Alibaba for about $10,000. So we don't know if the Ukrainians are the ones who purchased this drone, loaded it up with explosives, and then just slammed it into this building, but I mean, anybody could have done this, as this drone has a pretty long flight time. Here's a video of what this drone looks and sounds like in the sky. I mean, that would be pretty fun to operate. So in response, they're feeling a bit on edge in Sevastopol. At night, they did activate their air defense systems, and this is what it looked like. So the Russians in Sevastopol are losing their bananas, and it doesn't matter how you spin this, this doesn't look good for the Russians. Either Sevastopol is under attack, which shows that Ukraine has the ability to strike deep into Russian-occupied territory, or there's nothing there, and they're just firing blankly into the sky because they don't know what else to do. Either way, not a good indicator for how this is going for Russia. Next strike that we should once again talk about is this Antonovsky Bridge. It just keeps getting struck and struck, and it's probably beyond repair at this point for the Russians. So once again, they're attempting to construct a pontoon bridge in order to get vehicles and supplies across this very wide, fast-moving river. I think this is a terrible plan. I don't know why Russia is even bothering. If the Ukrainians with precision weapons can strike this bridge, then constructing a pontoon bridge isn't going to last very long. I'll give this a day once they finally get it operational. Also being struck again, there's pictures and videos, is the road going over the Nova Kakhovka hydroelectric power dam. We've talked about this in previous videos, how there's a weak point over the canal lock here. They successfully destroyed the rail line going over this gap. But there also is another weak point that the Ukrainians have been striking, and it's this curved road right here. They have to be very careful not to strike the dam proper, as this would release the reservoir. But there's a curve in the road, and this is where the Ukrainians have been recently focusing their attacks, and it's worked. I don't know how many Russian soldiers are on the north bank of the Dnipro River. Estimates are between 20 and 30,000, but there's no way to get across this river now with a heavy vehicle. So the Russian soldiers on the north bank of this river are isolated. If they, for whatever reason, need to pull back, they're not going to be able to bring any of their vehicles or equipment with them. Also, I just don't know how the civilians on the north bank of this river are surviving or being resupplied. If trucks can't get across, they can't bring food, they can't bring medicine, they can't bring all the essentials to operate a fairly large city in Kherson. I would estimate that there's still probably about 100,000 civilians living in this city, and I don't even know how they're getting clean drinking water or electricity at this point if everything across the river has been severed and the Ukrainian military forces are pressing down from the north. I've seen reports and videos online of civilians choosing to just risk their life and walk to Ukrainian-controlled territory, just hope that the Russians don't notice them, don't shoot them on sight. But I think as winter approaches, it's very important for the civilians who can get out of this city to get out of this city, even if it means going across the river and maybe falling back to one of these towns or villages in the Russian-occupied territory. So sensing that the Russians have stalled, the United States and Western allies are rushing arms to help Ukrainians retake Ukrainian territory, and the United States announced their next security assistance package worth $775 million. This is the tweet from Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. And here's a summary of everything that's being delivered in this package. It feels more and more like these packages are being announced and delivered every week or two from the United States. And on the flip side, what has the Russians been doing the last 2 months? About 2 months ago, they took the city of Severodonetsk. This was a huge morale defeat for the Ukrainians. Then Vladimir Putin announced this operational pause, and we've been in an operational pause for 2 months now. It's no coincidence that at the same time, the Ukrainians obtained their first HIMARS launchers, using these rockets to take out command posts and take out ammunition depots. This has completely immobilized the Russian forces. Yes, they've made a little bit of progress here and a little bit of progress here, but this dotted line is their stated objective, full control of the Donbass region, and at the rate they're going, this war for the Russians is going to go well into the year 2023. So here's an interesting article from the Moscow Times. Ukrainian southern counteroffensive unlikely as Russia bolsters forces on the north bank of the Dnipro River. Let me read the first paragraph. A significant Ukrainian offensive to recapture Russian-occupied territories in its southern regions is seen as increasingly unlikely as by experts as Moscow moves to reinforce these areas. And I think what's happening here is how is this war going to play out over a long period of time? In the short term, Russia is threatening to hold these referendums to formally annex these occupied territories like the city of Kherson. There was urgency from Ukraine to retake the city to prevent these referendums from taking place. But I personally think that given the political and economic situation for Russia and all of these security assistance packages coming from Western allies. I'm arguing to you that 3 or 4 months from now, Ukraine will be militarily more capable than it is today, and Russia will be weaker than it is today. So to tell all your men to charge across no man's land, for me it makes sense if they continue to wait and see how this plays out. And I've mentioned this in previous videos, but everyone wants to know, why isn't Ukraine getting Abrams tanks? Why aren't they getting, F-16s and A-10s today? Why aren't they being given the heavy equipment to drive out the Russians from their territory, city by city, block by block, and building by building? And I personally don't think that is how this war is going to end. I think this war is going to end with Russia experiencing some kind of political or economic collapse, and then they just kind of give up and withdraw from Ukrainian territory. And the historical example I want to show you is from World War I. So here is the Central Powers of Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and on the Eastern Front they were fighting Russia. So this brown line here is the farthest Russian advance that Russia was capable of making in 1914, and 2 years later, this orange line is where the front was when Russia had a political and economic collapse at home. The Russian czars were overthrown. So Russia just kind of collapsed and gave up this war on the Eastern Front. The problem is, in order for a war to end, both sides have to agree the war is over. So as the Russian military and the Russian forces just kind of gave up and started withdrawing, the Central Powers didn't acknowledge it, they didn't recognize it, and they kept pushing east, taking as much territory as they can get. So the farthest advance of the Central Powers in 1918 was this green line, and it was only a couple years later that Russia was able to piece itself back together and then reassert itself and reclaim this territory under the Soviet Empire. It's just my theory, it's just my thoughts. That's how I think this war is going to end at some point in 2023 with an economic or political collapse at home, and then they just kind of give up and leave. In the meantime, Ukraine has to hang in there, and morale is very important. Here's a fantastic troll move by the Ukrainians where Ukraine mocks Russia with a Kyiv parade of captured tanks and trucks. This is fantastic. The government of Ukraine set up blocks-long display of captured Russian tanks, shattered military trucks, and stilled artillery pieces through Kyiv's city center on Saturday as a mock parade ahead of Ukraine's Independence Day celebrations. Fellow YouTuber Denis Davidov attended the mock parade and he streamed it live. It's about 17 minutes if you want to go check this out. Here's a small clip I found on Facebook just to show you what daily life looks like now for Ukrainians in Kyiv. And here's what it looks like for Ukrainians partying and celebrating at night. There's also pictures of current Ukrainian service members, and you can see here a wounded veteran. It's good to see them out and about, enjoying the parade, living their lives. Trying to get back to a sense of normal in the capital city. Glory to the heroes, glory to Ukraine. That's all for this update video. If you found it informative, give me a thumbs up, really helps out with the channel. Questions or comments, let me know. Until the next video, take care, be safe.